Now, there is nothing evil in the nature of Augustus too. In spiritualistic circles, however, he would most certainly be interpreted as an evil spirit or guide. His nature is protective. The basic ideas and beliefs that have been personified into his being, that became his being, were formed to protect Augustus I from the destructive ideas given to him in his childhood, to combat the beliefs in powerlessness and futility. To that degree, they were added on to the original ideas, but still at an early age, so it was from the child's concept of a powerful being that Augustus II sprang. The greater the feelings of weakness, then, the greater the compensating feelings of power and strength, but again, with no attempt at conscious reconciliation. Augustus's mother noted only that her son seemed highly changeable. Augustus II did not present himself as obviously, quote-unquote, another personality, until after Augustus's marriage, when the demands of fatherhood and making a living were placed upon him. He could not cope. His beliefs in his unworthiness prevented him from using his abilities, or even pursuing a course of effective action with any persistence. It was then that Augustus II began to assert himself, and to Augustus's wife. In his own way, Augustus II would prove to her that she was married to quite an unusual, powerful man, a paragon of virility and strength. But to do so, Augustus I must appear as Augustus II to her. This continued for some time. Augustus I would first develop a splitting headache, and then this alien from outer space would arrive, the commanding male that Augustus I was not. Here, however, the quote-unquote deception brought about certain difficulties. Not only was Augustus II more sexually promiscuous, but by contrast, Augustus I seemed very pallid indeed. Augustus II was originally intended to help Augustus I. It's true that the exotic conditions spilled over, casting some glamour on Augustus I when Augustus II left for a time, but the contrast was too blatant, too out in the open. Augustus I, still the primary personality, became even more frightened. He knew that gradually Augustus II was outliving his purpose, showing him up, and had to go. In fact, once Augustus II obviously quote-unquote took over the body of Augustus I, it was all out in the open in the family. The wife began to take notes of what was done and said. When these events were repeated to Augustus I later, the lying and cheating was evident. So was the infantile nature of the quote-unquote personality. Yet Augustus II purported to be all-wise, from a galaxy far surpassing Earth in every category of endeavor. And here he was making predictions that never happened, and boasted and lying like a trooper. The beliefs whose energy generated this quote-unquote alternate self-image then appeared in the daylight, acting out their natural results in physical reality. Augustus I, now in manhood, was forced to perceive the nature of these beliefs to some extent, yet when he was here visiting Rupert, he still would not examine them. Augustus II had not taken over now for 2½ months. Augustus is in a dilemma, for he still holds intact the beliefs in his own powerlessness, and the contradictory beliefs of omnipotence are not now being expressed through Augustus II. Yet expressed they will be, and so in the interview Augustus I, who we will now simply call Augustus, at one moment came through with his gigantic belligerence, staring at Rupert and telling him that he could annihilate anyone who hurt him. In the next moment the great plea for help would surface, the love of his wife and child. In one sentence Augustus would make a statement, and 10 minutes later make it clear with another remark that the first fact had not been true. Here the polarity between Augustus I and II had dissolved, so that the two opposing systems of belief operated alongside each other. Still, Augustus would not examine his own words, his own thoughts, or see the contradictions so obvious to others. The nature and importance of belief appeared so eloquently that Rupert was astounded, and found himself forced into some complicated psychological footwork. The two quote-unquote personalities were no longer separate, but merging. Augustus said, "My friend killed a neighbor of mine who was against me by giving him pneumonia. He looks out for me." Another neighbor has ulcers, and Augustus told Rupert that after he touched this neighbor, the ulcers seemed to have been healed. So he said, "I would like to know how much of this great ability belongs to me." And looking briefly away, "Perhaps I do not need my friend to protect me after all." Now, this was definitely to the good, in that Augustus was beginning to feel that perhaps he was not powerless. His own personality, however, is left to handle the definite unsavory characteristics of an Augustus II who is no longer personified. He is left with the questions: if I am so powerful, how is it that I am so weak and cannot even support my family? If I am so great, why cannot I effectively use my energy? For the body of Augustus is once again under the sway of beliefs about himself that are highly contradictory. Before, he was physically powerful when he was Augustus II, and weak when he was Augustus I. Now, as Augustus, he is alternately strong and weak, and the body stresses are apparent. As Augustus II, he could stay up night and day and perform physical tasks quite difficult for the normal human being to do, for he operated under the indivisible idea of power and strength. It had taken some courage for him to let Augustus II vanish. Because the neat divisions of beliefs no longer exists, however, he will seem even more difficult to his wife since the characteristics of Augustus II now quote-unquote bleed into his own. He will lie, for example, where before only Augustus II lied. Here then is a case where directly opposing beliefs dominated the conscious mind at various times, each operating the body in its own manner. Physically, the body has the same capacity for strength regardless of which group of ideas were dominant, but practically speaking, Augustus I was incapable of performing the feats of Augustus II. Augustus II once leaped from a second-story window to the ground in anger and without injury, a highly unusual feat. Augustus, however, is so exhausted that he can barely get through a normal day. You had a situation in which an individual, through beliefs, put his power and energy literally beside himself. He could use it only when he switched beliefs completely. It was only because the childlike characteristics of Augustus II finally appeared so blatantly that Augustus II had to be dispensed with. Augustus's wife made the difference, for it was obvious that she did not have the same opinion of this quote-unquote friend that her husband had. Her beliefs then became the new foundation, the one point of change that allowed Augustus to view this alternate self-image with any kind of detachment at all. There is no real adequate framework in your society in which people like Augustus can be treated with any effectiveness. An analyst might consider Augustus as schizophrenic and label him neatly, but such terms are basically meaningless. If the analyst, over a period of time, should convince Augustus that his condition in the present resulted from some specific inhibited event in the past, and if the analyst was an intuitive and understanding man, then Augustus might change his beliefs enough so that some kind of quote-unquote cure was worked. He would then conveniently remember such an event and display the expected emotions as he re-experienced it. Unfortunately, in his present state, powerless as it were without Augustus II, he might also simply call on his quote-unquote alter ego to show the good doctor that he was no one to trifle with. Then there would be the matter of helping Augustus to face the implications of his other self's behavior in such a way that he could accept it as a portion of his own identity. When Augustus II was in control of the body, the chemical makeup varied considerably. It showed significant differences over Augustus's usual hormonal status. The chemical changes were caused by the transition in beliefs that operated, and not the other way around. If chemical alteration were made in Augustus II, he would return to the Augustus I personality, but the change would be artificial, not permanent, and possibly quite dangerous. The chemically inhibited tendencies would to some extent be forcefully blanketed through medication. The problem would remain, though, and it is quite possible that overt suicidal tendencies would result, or more insidious hidden suicidal inclinations, where vital organs would be attacked. Sometimes such cases are handled within another framework, in which Augustus would be considered possessed by an independent quote-unquote evil entity whenever Augustus II took over. Now again, if Augustus somehow changed his beliefs, it is possible that even within that framework some kind of cure would be effected, but at the same time, the dangers and difficulties would make such a cure relatively impossible. If a practitioner who believed that Augustus was possessed then convinced Augustus of the quote-unquote fact, their joint charged beliefs might possibly work for a while. Convincing Augustus that he was under the domination of an evil entity would be step one. Step two, getting rid of the intruder, could at least follow. The trouble is that working within that framework, the self-structure is further weakened, for the normally repressed characteristics of Augustus II are forever denied. Augustus must then always be quote-unquote good, and yet he would always feel vulnerable to another such invasion of evil. The same results as those given could be possible: the growth of suicidal tendencies or other self-destructive behavior. Luckily, the human mind and body are far more flexible, durable, and creative than ever given credit for. Many cases like Augustus's never come to light. The individuals involved cure themselves. Sometimes this is done when such a person chooses to undergo a traumatic experience. Often one part of the personality will plan this quite deliberately, while the other portion closes its eyes. These events can seem to be disasters or near disasters, and yet they can sufficiently mobilize the entire personality for survival's sake. In a moment of high critical tension, the personality may put itself together again. Such critical uniting episodes usually do not involve long sickness, though they may, but instead events such as bad accidents. The difficulty may be exteriorized as a broken limb, for example, instead of a broken self, and as the body is repaired, the necessary assimilation of belief takes place. There are various kinds and stages in such cases. Each individual is unique. Sometimes the framework includes another method of cure, in which portions of each conflicting side of the personality break off to form a clearer psychological structure which can communicate with the other two, act as a referee, and reconcile the opposing beliefs held by each. This is done many times without the main personality realizing what is really going on. On occasion, automatic writing is utilized, or the Ouija board. Both are methods to uncover invisible conscious beliefs that are accepted by you consciously at any given time, say, and deliberately ignored at another given time. When people using such methods are told that their writing comes through from a demon or the devil or an evil spirit, then those invisible beliefs are shoved farther away. Any search into the mind becomes frightening and dangerous, since it might lead to further such quote-unquote invasion. Now, such invasion is usually the sudden appearance of previously unacceptable beliefs, quite conscious but invisible, tucked away. Then they suddenly appear as alien. In most instances, the possession concept makes it all the more upsetting. Easier to face often is the idea that the responsibility for such ideas must belong to another entity or being. In all cases of this nature involving Augustus-type episodes, the problem is one of unassimilated beliefs. Instead of such comparatively drastic behavior, however, such beliefs can be expressed through various parts of the body. Unfortunately, a system of medicine that largely deals with symptoms only encourages a patient to project such beliefs on new organs, for instance, after already sacrificing others in operations. The solutions lie in the conscious mind. I cannot emphasize this too strongly, and in those beliefs that you accept about the nature of reality, and specifically about the nature of your being. While the most basic work must be done by the individual, help is always available from a variety of sources, both within and without. You will literally interpret and use almost any data that comes to you as helpful, and it will be highly effective, unless your beliefs lead you to think, perhaps, that everyone is against you, or that you are beyond help, or that you do not deserve it. Other such ideas can also close you off from help, of course, but you will instinctively look for it and use it when possible.